I just have trouble buying Corey Perry. I don't think that they've called on Brett Connolly. And then the other thing that I've learned today, just calling around some people, and I'll do a story in The Athletic on Thursday, is they are going after a defenseman. And there's some names out there that I've heard that I'm trying to second source, so I'm not going to throw them out here right now. One of them has played the Wild a ton, and I think all Wild fans will know him. He's a 5'6" guy. If they sign this guy, I think Nick Seeler's a goner. I think if they sign him, I could see them trading Seeler unless they have a way to get out of Patterson. But I don't think it would be somebody to replace Jonas Brodin. But if they sign this guy, he's going to play. Hunt is on a one-way. Seeler was obviously the odd man out. This guy's role would kind of be Nick Seeler-like. I could see them maybe move him. There's 2 or 3 defensemen out there right now that I think probably interest the Wild. But I was shocked today when I called a couple agents and I heard some of that they were talking to defensemen. So, but I don't want to say who yet. It's not somebody that's going to be like, all of a sudden, like Wild fans will be like, we're going to win a cup.
You just had a record for question askers at the Russo-Souhan Show. You stood there for half an hour. Yeah. 15 minutes before the question, 15 minutes after the question. New world record. Thank you. And you know what? You get to take all this stuff. Just take it all. Take whatever you want.
Thanks, guys.
Thank you. Appreciate it. Other live questions? Vicky, do we have a Philip Calendar question? Can we do a 200th show without a Philip Calendar question? I think not. Vicky's going to come up and ask hers. I don't think Philip actually exists. I think these are Clyde's questions, and he just doesn't want to admit it.
That would be funny. Yeah.
Well, it's a nice segue because his question is about Pavelski. I know bringing a player in the latter third of their career like Pavelski comes with downside risk, especially if you sign him for 3 years. But isn't that a worthwhile price to pay to essentially buy 2 years of development for Fiala and Cunnin on the right wing?
Fiala's going to play right wing. Is that most likely? The only thing though is I just, especially if they got say 2 of those 4, I just wonder where it's like Greenway, where's Cunnin? All of a sudden they just have a lot of players. Are you really sending one of those guys down to the minors? Makes very little sense. Pavelski is an interesting guy because he doesn't skate great, and he scored 38 goals on a team that has a lot more talent than the Wild. He won't have Brent Burns shooting 500 pucks a night at him to show off his incredible stick handling or stick skills in terms of getting shot deflections and tips and things like that. In fact, the Wild don't even get shots through. So it concerns me. But Simmons on 5 years could be concerning as well. So Pavelski's a winner. In the locker room, he would be great. Same thing with Simmons, by the way. This guy's character is off the charts. So those are the pluses. Net front for both guys would be absolutely awesome. So look, there's risk with anything when you go into unrestricted free agency. You give a 31-year-old like Wayne Simmons 5 years, that could be as big a risk as giving a 35-year-old like Joe Pavelski 3 years. So, it's worthwhile maybe for the short term. But the question is, especially if you go long term with Wayne Simmons, is that an eventual buyout years 3, 4, 5? We might see. If I had to put up some money of my own right now on who the Wild sign, I think Simmons is the Wild. I just don't think at the end of the day, I think it's a little concerning that Pavelski hasn't come here yet or hasn't committed to coming here. You would think he'd want to check it out, besides just talking to Bruce and Paul and Craig. And I just think that Wayne, if the Wild lose out on Pavelski, and it is interesting, Wayne Simmons is in this spot where he's gotten more than a dozen calls, but everybody's going for the big fish. And then when they don't get him, Wayne's going to make a lot of money because they're all going to come to him kind of desperate. And Wilder might be the most desperate of them all. And the other thing with Wayne Simmons is he's really good friends with Chris Stewart, and Stewart loved playing here, thought it was a first-class organization. So he's gotten, I think, a lot of accolades there.
Cool.
So,
well, since you're oftentimes wrong, that means Pavelski, and I'm good with that.
Yeah.
Wow. She's lowered the...
He admits it himself.
Took you into the boards.
You're getting no inside scoops in Europe now. I'm just telling you.
Yeah.
0.
I'll talk to you after a couple beers. But I wanted to wish you... I want to wish you guys a happy 200, and I'd say I can't believe it's been that long, but because I've been around,
you can believe
I
it.
do.
You have been to almost every live show. It's crazy.
It's amazing. We do appreciate it.
And you've dragged poor Clyde there to everyone.
I mean, is there a Purple Heart? What do you get out of this? I mean, there's got to be some kind of an award for this. Yeah, you got a T-shirt. Yeah, you got a classic T-shirt.
And Slacks wants me to tell you that he won't have access to Photoshop in 2 more days.
Why?
He has a job change coming up.
Oh, okay.
Does that mean prison?
Well, I had to tell him that we call him a stalker already.
Yeah, well,
so,
I mean...
Yeah.
But so,
I thought he prided himself on being a stalker.
His old job was where he Photoshop stuff? Is that the deal?
Apparently.
Oh, okay. Is that why he no longer has a job?
He got fired for Photoshopping us,
Could be.
which is the greatest gift we could get for our 200th show, I think, is Russo Slacks getting fired for Photoshopping Michael Russo.
Sadly, there's no Photoshop apps.
There aren't?
I mean, there are, right?
I
Well,
would
he'd
think
only
so.
ask somebody else to do it for him anyway.
That's true.
Yeah, whatever. All right, thank you, guys.
Thank you, Vicki. Appreciate it. Okay, here comes Bert. What do we got, Bert?
This has been a long podcast.
Says the guy who's talked for 2 hours.
And I did.
He's tired.
I did the 9 to noon show this morning, so my throat is just beyond sore right now.
That's what you get paid the big bucks for.
Yeah.
So
what's up?
First of all, I want to know why everybody's surprised about all the left wingers. I mean, this is Minnesota after all.
Where's our drummer when we need him?
That's funny.
Jokes write themselves.
Trump almost won Minnesota last time, right? Didn't Hillary win Minnesota by like very slim margin?
Yeah, it was very slim. Yeah. My serious question is Matt Hendricks, the new position. What exactly are they looking for from him?
When I talked to Paul in his office a couple weeks ago, he wanted to add Matt. First of all, a lot of respect between Matt Hendricks and Paul Fenton. Paul drafted him in Nashville. I think it was probably likely that since Minnesota wasn't going to re-sign Matt, that only Winnipeg would, and I think he got word from Winnipeg that they weren't going to re-sign him, so he knew his career probably needed to go to the next phase. And I think that Paul really was intrigued by having a forward and a defenseman now in the development team, and also Brad Bombardier has traveled immensely the last several years. He's basically been a one-man show having to go. I mean, this isn't just somebody that goes to Iowa. He's going to freaking Quebec and, anywhere the Wild have a prospect, he's constantly going. Like the smallest towns in Canada to go get Wild prospects. So now you kind of split them up, and now Brad can take care of the D, and Matt Hendricks can take care of the forwards.
Thanks, Bert. Appreciate it, and thanks to Bert also for being here so often. And guess what? Someone related to Heather Rule is ready to ask a question.
Yes. I like your first name.
Barb.
Yes.
Okay, so I was wondering where the Wild are at with the Spurgeon extension. Since Fenton apparently prefers tall guys from what he said at the draft.
Yeah, that was honestly, I regret actually the tweet. I should have just at least put Fenton jokingly. Like, everybody, when he said it, during his presser, I mean, we all laughed. It was, that's where facial expression can't show up on a tweet. So his point was, and it's not like every GM, like Brent Flair. A lot of times, I'd ask him about a player, and he'd be like, "We're out of small jerseys." Like, it was a joke. And that's what he was saying, is that we have a lot of small prospects. So I was just glad when we saw all these tall guys come to the table. He wasn't, I think he took a lot of bad heat for that one. In terms of Spurgeon, he wants to, regardless of size, he wants to bring back Spurgeon. Spurgeon wants to, at some point this summer, get in front of Fenton and have Fenton explain to him his vision for where this team is going. And that will determine whether Spurgeon's willing to sign on the dotted line this summer. If he doesn't re-sign going into this season, then the Wild are at a risk of probably trading him and losing him. Because then what's going to happen is, if the Wild have a bad year, which is very possible, then you get to the trade deadline on February 24th, and now we could be looking at Mikko being traded. We could be looking at Spurgeon being traded. All of a sudden the Wild could really genuinely, for the first time in years, be an absolute seller at the deadline. But right now the goal is absolutely to sign him. And if they trade Spurgeon, I will say, if the way things are looking right now, there could be a lot of right shot D available that are really good next summer. So, it wouldn't be the absolute worst thing in the world. But they absolutely want to keep him. So
Good question. Thank you, Barb. I'll be seeing Heather
The one thing I will
Twins
say
game.
is Spurgeon's value is a lot higher now than it will be at the trade deadline, in my opinion. So the fact that if they go down the road of trying to extend him and then he doesn't sign, you're probably not getting nearly the return, most likely.
Let's buzz through. Feel free to come up again. If anybody else has another live question, we will take that first because you showed up here. But let's buzz through a couple of Twitter questions before we get out of here. From Cody Kobernick, how's Zucker doing during all these trade rumors?
He admitted to me when I sat down with him a couple of weeks ago that it will be easier said than done than just forgetting all this. But he's a professional. He'll do it. It absolutely looks like right now they are keeping him because I don't think Andrews is going to sign here. So then, they don't have to really create that spot. If all of a sudden things pop up, I mean, there could be a trade at any point still as well at any point this summer. And it's funny, when I was shooting the breeze with Fenton at baggage claim coming back from Vancouver, we were just shooting breeze, and he kind of said something that has been reverberating in my head really the last week. It was kind of like a little reminder that just in case, just if I don't make a trade now, it doesn't mean that nothing could pop later in the summer. And I do think a lot of these teams right now, one with the cap going down, and two with the fact that so many teams have to sign so many restricted free agents to such expensive contracts. I think a lot of teams are scared to make trades right now because they want to count their money at the end of the summer. And then once these guys are signed, all of a sudden we'd be like, wait a minute, I have $4 million. I have $3 million. I have $8 million or whatever. So, I mean, Winnipeg with Laine and Connor, Besser with Vancouver, there's a reason why all these agents right now are not signing their restricted free agents. Aho, Marner, it's because they want to see what the first or two guys go, and then all of a sudden that'll create a market. So...
Yes, sir.
So, it sounds like you're referencing Tyler Myers.
No, it's not going to be it's going to be a third pair defenseman. It's not going to be a super rich defenseman. It'll be somebody that'll probably get a couple $1 million.
Okay, and then for the draft, it just seems like Caulfield's exactly what we need, a right winger that can score. Do you know why they passed on him?
No, you know what? The one thing I will say is when you're talking to scouts and the GM after a draft, they're never going to tell you why they didn't take a certain player. I mean, we could just assume that they liked Boldy better, that he was ahead of them on their list, that they never thought that he'd fall to him, and that they were probably concerned about his size. And that's a valid thing. I mean, the guy is electric goal scorer, but you do when that guy walked. I mean, I wrote it in one of my things the other day, a mailbag. When he walked by me on the aisle coming back from Vancouver, I could not believe it was him. I mean, and that's all. I mean, he's incredible, but I'm just like, that guy is going to play in the NHL. I mean, he might be generously listed at 5'7". And so I get it. But again, if all of a sudden at the end of the day, Boldy is a freaking 50 goal scorer in the NHL or the next Johnny Gaudreau or Jabrinket, and Boldy doesn't amount to being a Mikko Rantanen-like 2, 3, 4 years ago, later, from now, we can all look back on it and say they maybe made an error. But I am one. Philip Johansson was different because we all knew that was like out of left field. But I am one that have never on the day of a draft ripped draft picks because it just, even when they took, was it Eriksson Ek over Besser? You don't know. Then Besser, scores what he does in the NHL and Eriksson Ek doesn't. And you look at Besser and all right, they effed up, in my opinion. Although I will tell you this, when you ask any scout in any press box at any time, they will tell you that there's not a team in this league that would have taken Besser over Eriksson Ek at the time. That Eriksson Ek was that valued, that he was a center, that you just take him over a smaller size Brock Besser. In hindsight, I wouldn't do it, especially a guy that grew up right down the road and is as awesome a player and as person as Brock Besser is. So
actually, one more question. Now that you mentioned Brock Besser, I know the Wild have interest in acquiring him. Mm-hmm. Is there any chance they can swing a deal
I can't
for him?
imagine. I mean, again, it is sort of weird right now because, Ben Hankison's playing hardball, but, the one thing he said to me on the radio this morning that I forgot about is no team can sign Besser because he made his NHL debut the 1 year, so he's technically not your typical Group 2 free agent. He's like a group, I forget what they call it. I forget what it's called in the CBA. He called it 10.2, but I've always called it something else. So in a lot of ways, that gives Vancouver all the leverage in the world. Like it's, Vancouver could sit there and say, Brock, buddy, you're not playing. Sit here until you want to sign what we do. I mean, technically, they have absolute finite leverage because he can't go talk to any team unless they trade him. So Besser's going to re-sign. They're not getting rid of Brock Besser. I mean, you have to offer a haul to get him. I'm not saying I wouldn't try. I mean, make the phone call. They actually did try to make the phone call at one point for Jess Zucker straight up.